Hey church family, I just wanted to take a little while to talk you through what's actually happening over the next few days. As some of you have heard, we are looking forward to resuming our full services on the 5th of July. Now, while that was about to happen, we also got word that we have a new government order stating that we all need to have face coverings in public spaces. So let me just talk through how some of these things are going to mesh together. First thing I want us to keep in mind is that we are moving forward, not backward. Okay, so I want us to really keep that as our focus in trying to do some of these things. Is we want to keep moving forward in what God gave us in the season, rather than have to step back and have to revert to some of the things that we did early on when we had this pandemic hit. All right, so I would like us to use the ground that we have and keep moving forward rather than have to step back. Secondly, I want us to have a good mindset. Okay, so I want you to just keep this in your heart, a mindset that is seeking after honoring the Lord, not my preference. I'm honoring the Lord, not my preference. Even if my preference could end up being correct or right for a certain circumstance, preference has to do with my taste and my way. We're going to say, Lord, we're going to honor you together. So that means preferring one another, sometimes even being willing to be wronged in one sense, or something is overreached, or something feels like it's a way too excessive. Some of that you will encounter, but anyone who's married or anyone who has a family understands that this is something we do naturally in our own homes. So I'm saying, let's have that mindset when we get together as a church, of preferring one another and being willing to lay down our preference. Okay, so this is always in the context of honoring the Lord. When I honor the Lord with my heart, I'm willing to honor one another. Okay, and it's an easy thing for us to do in that context. Secondly, I wanted to talk about safety measures. Okay, so in this season, there were certain things that we had been discussing as a team of how we're going to start welcoming more people back, or even opening it up for people who are not even our members. So, if someone wanted to visit us and things like that, how do we create a safe environment that we know we can help as many people as possible, considering the fact that we have a very small facility. We don't have a large building like some other churches, so we need to be really good stewards of how we handle this space. So some of the things we're doing is obviously the face coverings, which is something we were planning to do just for us as a team, but now we had to bring you as the church in on it as well. Not by our choice, but I think that's still a good practice in general, because it helps reduce respiratory droplets that can get on each other. Okay, so this by no means, so in your mindset, don't say, well, this doesn't eliminate it. Nothing eliminates the possibility of contracting something like COVID, but what we can do is help the cause along. Okay, and that's all we're doing in this season. Secondly, we're going to be cleaning surfaces. Okay, so anywhere there are surfaces that are used, especially tables, doorknobs, things that like furniture, the chairs are cleaned after every service. We have Celebrate Recovery on Monday nights, so it's cleaned after the Sunday services. It's also cleaned after the Monday service, and also trash cans. Everything is changed. Everything that we have as a touch surface is cleaned. Thirdly, we also have sanitizer stations at each door. Please make use of that, okay? We would encourage you, if you're coming into the building, especially if you have children, this is one of the things that we would be encouraging, for kids to wash their hands well before they get into kids ministry. And also while they're in kids ministry, if they're given something, their hands to be washed well, similarly to do with things that they touch. So if you're coming into the building, please make use of the sanitizer stations. How we're handling kids spaces, I want to talk a little bit about that. We have got rid of a lot of the extra trappings that we would have had in a kid's space, that would have been a lot of things that kids would have touched a lot, to down to a sort of a more condensed form of things that we can wash regularly, clean thoroughly after every use. Okay, so especially our 1 and 2 year old group, which is our green group, which is reopening this week on July the 5th. We're having that space completely sort of more of a skeletal kind of a look, so that the little toys that we do give the kids, they can play with it, enjoy it, and then we can wash them and clean them for the next use. All right, same thing goes for the other two groups, which is the orange group and the purple group, which have a larger space and not their typical classrooms. Okay, so we're going to be putting that into play as well. Same thing to do with snack and other things. Things will be pre-packaged, not used as far as not open share kind of food. So that brings me to upstairs, how we handle food and beverage and things upstairs. You will notice our first communion Sunday is this week. Okay, so we're gonna have a communion cup with a wafer in the top, in the lid, so it's all in one. Okay, so when you come into the church building, one of the first things you'll see on the side of you as you enter the door is a table with communion cups, cleanly lined out. So just grab yours, or if you're with a family, grab as many as you need for your family and keep them with you in your purse or in your bag or whatever it is. Just hold on to them, and at the end of the service, when we have our children come join us for communion, we will do that together. So you might ask, now how does this relate with this whole thing of wearing a face covering during the service? Again, we're going to extend grace to one another, to, like, if you needed a breath every once in a while, or you're feeling a bit too stuffy, to pull it down for a second. I get that. That's understandable. Same thing goes with if you're taking a sip of water, because it's going to be hot. We're going to provide some cold water at least, if not other beverages, just to grab a quick drink of water, or during communion to have your communion juice. All of these things, there is room for that. Okay, so we're not going to be like sitting there on top of you saying, hey, you're going to make sure that your mask is on it like every second of while you're in the building. But we would like you to maintain the spirit of what we're trying to do, which is we're going to use the face coverings as long as we're in the building, because it's a closed space. Okay, so we're just going to use that sense and say, okay, we're going to, as far as possible, use the face covering. If I do need to catch a breath, I'll sort of use it like that. Okay. Finally, the last thing we do, any things that we use as cameras, microphones, pens, different things like that, we'll wipe down all the things that we use like that as well. Same thing goes for the restrooms. Depending on usage, if we see the restroom being used a lot, we might even clean it during the service. But more than likely, if it's being used well and people are washing their hands, again, we would encourage good hygiene in those things. Lastly, I wanted to talk about what a full service looks like, because we keep saying this phrase, full service, right? So on July the 5th, we're coming back to what we call full services. That means we're going to have an adult service upstairs and a full kids service downstairs. So that means all the way from 1-year-olds all the way through to 5th grade, kids are going to have something happening for them downstairs, which includes a lesson, worship, and other things, but specifically meeting the ministry needs of our children. Okay, so if you are uncomfortable with the fact that anyone who is above the age of 2, which is 3-year-olds and up, have to wear face coverings according to this new order. So I know it's going to be extremely uncomfortable for our children. So one of the things that we're doing to alleviate some of that is we're going to shorten our service back to what we had during the online only days, which is around 55 to 1 hour, 55 minutes to 60 minutes of service, so that those of you who are in the building upstairs don't have to sit there with a mask that long. But same thing goes for our children. We don't want them just worn out from that. So for you as a family, there are lots of decisions ahead in this next few weeks. We would encourage you, if you feel uncomfortable with any part of this, we always have the online facility available. All right, so if you're someone who says, I cannot sit with a mask, I cannot physically do it, I would encourage you to worship from home. On the other hand, if you're someone who says, I'm just not comfortable with the whole idea of getting together yet, again, please worship from home. Okay, and if it's communion, make sure you grab something that's ready, so that when we worship together and have communion, you can join us in that too. All this to say, we're going to be moving forward regardless, okay? We're going to move forward regardless of what happens in our world, what happens around us. We want to keep pursuing the Lord together. And our mindset is to honor Him in everything that we do. Whether that means with face coverings, or that means whether we have to do communion slightly differently, or kids ministry looks slightly different, or even sharing with one another. We would encourage you to seek the Lord and honor Him in everything that you do. I love you, and I look forward to worshiping with you this Sunday.